In 2008, while the global financial system was collapsing, Switzerland made $800 billion appear. Not through bailouts, not through stimulus, through secrecy. That year, foreign money poured into Swiss banks faster than any year in history. Dictators, oligarchs, corporations, criminals, and perfectly legal billionaires all did the same thing. They moved their money to Switzerland. And Switzerland did what it always does. It asked no questions. It took no sides. It simply opened the vault. This isn't a story about a scandal. It's a story about a business model. Because while most countries build economies on cars, oil, or technology, Switzerland built its economy on something else entirely: other people's secrets. And it's been doing it for over a century. Switzerland holds everyone's secrets. That's its economy. And what that means goes far beyond banking. Let's start with a fact that sounds impossible. Switzerland is a landlocked country with almost no natural resources. No oil, no major mines, no coastline. It has 8.5 million people, fewer than New York City. And yet, it manages more foreign wealth than any country on Earth. Around $2.5 trillion in offshore assets. That's the official number. Some estimates put it closer to $4 trillion. For context, that's roughly the entire GDP of France, managed by a country the size of Maryland. So how does a tiny alpine nation with expensive cheese and expensive watches become the world's most trusted vault? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not just about numbered accounts and movie-style bank heists. It's about something far more deliberate. Switzerland didn't stumble into this role. It designed it. And the design started over 100 years ago, not with banks, but with war. Here's where it begins. In 1815, after the Napoleonic Wars, Switzerland declared permanent neutrality. It wouldn't pick sides. It wouldn't join alliances. It would simply stay out of everyone's conflicts. That sounds noble, but it was also strategic. Because neutrality doesn't just mean staying out of wars, it means everyone trusts you with their money during wars. And that's exactly what happened. During World War I, while Europe was destroying itself, Switzerland stayed neutral. French aristocrats moved money there. German industrialists moved money there. Russian exiles moved money there. Switzerland didn't ask who was right, it just held the money. Then came the real turning point. In 1934, Switzerland passed the Swiss Banking Act. This law did something unprecedented. It made banking secrecy a crime to violate. Not a guideline, not a policy, a crime. If a Swiss banker revealed client information, they could go to prison, even if the client was a criminal, even if a foreign government demanded the records. The vault was now protected by law. And here's the brilliance of it. This wasn't marketed as a service for criminals. It was marketed as a service for everyone. Because in the 1930s, Europe was full of people who had very good reasons to hide their money. Jewish families fleeing the Nazis, political dissidents, business owners dodging communist regimes. Switzerland offered them safety, and in exchange, it took a cut. A management fee, a transaction fee, a storage fee. The money came in, the secrets stayed in. And the system worked so well that by the time World War II ended, Switzerland was holding assets from both sides. Nazi gold, Allied funds, wealth from every faction, every ideology, every war crime. And it never had to choose. Now, here's how the system actually functions. Most people think Swiss banking is just about hiding money in a secret account. That's part of it, but the real mechanism is more sophisticated. Swiss banks don't just store money, they manage it. They invest it. They move it across borders. They create shell companies, trusts, and foundations that obscure ownership. Let's say you're a billionaire who doesn't want anyone to know how much you have. You don't just open a Swiss bank account, you create a structure. You form a foundation in Liechtenstein. You route money through a corporation in Panama. You hold assets through a trust in the Cayman Islands. And the central account, the one managing it all, is in Switzerland. From the outside, it looks like the foundation owns the money, or the corporation, or the trust. But behind every layer, there's a Swiss bank coordinating the structure. And because Switzerland has strict secrecy laws, even if a foreign government suspects something, getting information is nearly impossible. They can request it, Switzerland can refuse, and under Swiss law, that refusal is legal. This creates a problem for the rest of the world, because tax authorities need financial records to collect taxes. Law enforcement needs records to investigate crimes. But if the records are in Switzerland and Switzerland won't share them, the trail goes cold. For decades, this wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Swiss neutrality, Swiss stability, Swiss discretion. It became a brand, and the brand was worth billions. By the 1990s, Swiss banks were managing more than a third of the world's offshore wealth, not because they had the best returns, but because they had the best silence. Now let's talk about who actually uses this system. The popular image is dictators and drug lords, and yes, they've used it. Ferdinand Marcos, Mobutu Sese Seko, Hosni Mubarak all had Swiss accounts, but they're not the main clients. The main clients are corporations and wealthy individuals who aren't breaking any laws, they're just avoiding taxes, legally. Here's how it works. An European executive earns $10 million. If they keep it in their home country, they might pay $4 million in taxes. But if they move it to Switzerland, create an offshore structure, and only report what's required, they might pay $1 million or less. They didn't lie, they didn't cheat. They just used a system that allows money to disappear from one jurisdiction and reappear in another, taxed at a lower rate. This is called tax optimization, and it's completely legal in most cases. But the result is the same. Governments lose revenue, public services get underfunded, and the wealth gap widens, because the people who can afford Swiss structures don't pay the same effective tax rate as everyone else. And Switzerland facilitates this, not out of malice, but because secrecy is profitable. Every dollar managed generates fees, management fees, transaction fees, custody fees. It's estimated that Swiss banks earn around $30 billion a year just from wealth management services. That's more than Switzerland's entire chocolate industry. The secrecy isn't a side business, it's the business. But in the last 20 years, something started to change. The rest of the world got tired of it. After the 2008 financial crisis, governments were desperate for revenue. They started looking at offshore tax havens, and Switzerland was at the top of the list. The US passed a law called FATCA in 2010. It required foreign banks to report American account holders or face massive penalties. Switzerland resisted, but the penalties were too high. In 2014, it signed an agreement to share some information with the US. Then the EU applied pressure. Other countries followed. By 2018, Switzerland had agreed to automatic information exchange with more than 100 countries. On paper, this looked like the end of Swiss banking secrecy, but here's what actually happened. Switzerland changed the rules just enough to satisfy international pressure, but not enough to destroy the system. Yes, it now shares information, but only under very specific conditions, only for tax purposes, only if the request is precise. If a government asks, "Does this person have an account?" Switzerland might answer. But if a government asks, "Who has accounts with undeclared wealth?" Switzerland won't answer that, because the law still protects secrecy in most cases. So the system didn't collapse, it adapted. Wealthy clients started using more complex structures, more trusts, more foundations, more layers, and Swiss banks kept managing them, just with better lawyers. The fees kept coming, the secrecy stayed intact, and the rest of the world kept complaining. Here's the part no one really wants to say out loud. Switzerland isn't doing anything most countries wouldn't do if they could. Delaware does it, the Cayman Islands do it, Singapore does it. Every country with loose corporate laws and strong privacy protections offers some version of the same service. The difference is that Switzerland has been doing it longer, better, and more credibly. Because Switzerland has something the others don't: legitimacy. It's not a small island with a sketchy reputation. It's a stable democracy with a AAA credit rating and centuries of neutrality. When you move money to Switzerland, it doesn't look suspicious. It looks prudent. And that's the real genius. Switzerland turned secrecy into respectability. It convinced the world that hiding money isn't shady, it's sophisticated. And as long as that belief holds, the system survives. Even if the laws change, even if the transparency increases. Because the core product isn't secrecy anymore, it's trust. And trust, once built, is very hard to break. So where does this leave us? Right now, Switzerland is still managing trillions in offshore wealth. It's still one of the richest countries per capita on Earth, and it still operates under a model that prioritizes client privacy over international cooperation. The question is, how long can that last? Because the world is moving towards transparency, towards data sharing, towards global tax agreements. The OECD is pushing for a minimum corporate tax rate. The EU is cracking down on offshore tax havens. The US is increasing enforcement. Switzerland is being squeezed from every direction. But here's the thing. Switzerland has survived every pressure before. 2 world wars, the Cold War, the financial crisis, international sanctions. It survived because it doesn't take sides. It just holds the money. And as long as there are people who want privacy, there will be a country willing to provide it. Maybe it won't be Switzerland forever. Maybe it'll be Singapore or Dubai or somewhere that doesn't exist yet. But the system will continue because the demand for secrecy isn't going away. It's built into how power and wealth work. Governments want transparency. Wealthy people want privacy. And Switzerland built an entire economy on that contradiction. So the real question isn't whether Swiss banking secrecy will end. The question is, what replaces it, and who profits next?